Hello. I think this is working. I hope it's working. I'm new to the. I am new to Talk Studio. I was talking to my brother earlier about this, and I decided to give it a shot. Seems like everything's working okay. Yep. Yeah. I was just checking my stream out over on YouTube, so that audio's coming through fine. I got one whole. Well, that one whole viewer might have been me, so that's probably going to update and be good. Be a big fat zero. Um, so anyway, I was gonna originally continue this live stream, this commentary of Jill's live stream last night, but I ended up turning in early because I actually wanted to sleep like a normal human being. Slept for like 9 hours. Felt great. Um, got up this morning, did some exercises, had a good lunch slash brunch, more like a brunch really. Um, and here I am. So let's get started on this. Uh, I left this live stream last time, pretty much right as Jill was getting into his slavery apologetics, his multiple. He tries this multiple times to refute slavery in the Old Testament, and it's always hilarious for me anyway. It's not hilarious for other people, but to me, it's funny. So a lot of times it's just torture for everyone else, but I'll put myself through it every once in a while for shits and giggles. Here we go.
And you also had people who were making a living. They were also called avets.
Yeah, so he's trying to like he went on this for a little bit, but now what he's trying to say is like a ved is just like you and me working, right? And I went back a little bit because I did cover this a part of this part near the end of my last stream, but I figured I would start off here.
People like you or I. People like of mice and men.
I made a short of this that's coming up.
Was that Steinbeck? Larry and Curly. Read that book. We need to bring
George and Lenny.
back the novels, the classical novels, instead of reading Jim Crow.
They never went anywhere. We need to bring back the classical. They never went anywhere. They're still around. It's just whether or not people are going to read them or not. I don't know what Jim Crow 2.0 is. I have no idea what that is.
2.0. Pick up.
Supposedly racism isn't real, but I mean, if Jim Crow wasn't based on racism, then I don't know what it was based on. Or Jim Crow, the Jim Crow, the stuff that was going on during Jim Crow.
John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. You will learn that not
Hey,
too
Tom Tom.
long ago, this was still a thing. Men traveled onto other men's property and they were purchased. They were hired.
They weren't purchased, they were hired. And so I don't know if he's familiar with what Of Mice and Men. The time frame of Mice and Men is around it's Depression era United States. And George and Lenny are migrant workers. They're going from different they're looking for work wherever they can find it. And if I remember correctly, they're hired on as basically as farmhands. And if I remember correctly, they've always had some difficulty finding work because Lenny's mentally disabled.
To work for a specified amount of time, for a specified reason, whatever the reason is, whatever the payment is.
Well, see, and here's the problem because earlier he was trying to argue that work. I think he brought it up earlier that work was in the ancient Israel. Um, work was the money. So the currency of the time was work. Now he's saying that they were hired, they were purchased, so he's equivocating on purchase and hired. He's trying to say being hired is the same as being purchased. No, it's not. And it wasn't even in the Old Testament. It says even in Numbers, even when you read Numbers 25, um, and you're reading through that, because it's a lot of people quote 44 through 40 verses 44 through 46. But the thing about Numbers 25 is that it also gets into the fact that if an Israelite sells himself to another Israelite, he is to be treated as a hired worker. He is not to be treated as a slave. And when you look at it in an interlinear, the word for hired worker is sahir, not eved. So he is to be treated as a sahir, not as an eved. That doesn't mean it doesn't mean that the Israelite that sold himself to the other Israelite as an indentured servant is necessarily getting paid. He is to be given, I read that, and I think this is accepted amongst most scholars, that the way you read that is they're given the same consideration as a hired worker. You can't rule over them harshly. You have to treat them you have to give them the considerations of a hired worker. Eveds didn't get that same consideration.
Oh, and by the way, you had to pay your eveds in the scriptures.
No, you did not. You didn't even have to pay the, I think the term is evidivry, the Israelites who sold themselves as indentured servitude to other Israelites. They're not getting paid. They're being considered as hired workers, not being treated as evids. But that doesn't mean that they're actually getting paid. They're working as an indentured servant to basically in replacement of being able to pay the debt. There's no point in paying someone that's not liquid. They're paying off the debt by working it off. If they had the money, they would just pay off their debt. So this whole idea of like, well, work was and I have a feeling that I was chatting with Objective Ethics. He's a YouTuber on here, and he had a debate with um, JiL some time ago, Rebuke and Reprove JiL, and it was over on Robin Webster's channel. The interesting thing about that, they got into slavery, um, but Objective Ethics was telling me that he was going to be having another debate with JiL. So it sounds like JiL might try to actually pull some of this shit in a debate, where he equivocates that if I purchase someone, that's just code. That's just the word for hiring, right? The words say, when it goes to 44 through 46, it doesn't say, as for your male and female slaves, whom you may purchase them from the nations around you. It doesn't say you may hire them, that these will be your sahirs. It says these will be your eveds. As for your male and female eveds, you may buy them from the nations around you. You may purchase them from the sojourners, or the resident aliens that live amongst you, right? From their families and whatever. They can be they are your possession forever. You can pass them down as an inheritance. The term there is akuza. That means their property, just like a belt, just like purchasing a belt or a bike or a goat or oxen. The only difference is obviously with cattle, with slaves there was obviously some consideration for their humanity, but they were not on the same class level as free citizens, or even on the same class level as, and with this in this ethnic climate, the foreigner as an eved doesn't get the same considerations again as an Israelite eved, because again, they are to be considered in the same respects as a hired worker.
So much for the slavery, the chattel slave.
It is slavery. And it's even slavery by our standards today in the verses before, because when the Israelite sells himself to another Israelite, even though he's being considered as a sahir and not as an eved, it's still indentured servitude, which under the slavery convention, 1926 slavery convention, is slavery, which is the thing that JiL introduced a long time ago. When he introduced it, it was hilarious because it worked against his arguments all day long. Indentured servitude is slavery by our standards. So even if it's not specifically chattel slavery, that's basically being talked about. That's essentially being talked about in 44 through 46. It's still indentured servitude, which is still slavery.
Slavery narrative, you had to pay your evets. So when you take a look at what's actually going on, you don't get chattel slavery. Unless you're dishonest, unless you're a liberal just trying to give us the skin of the truth stuff.
You get chattel slavery. There is no data in the text that says that evets were paid. Even the evet of Re earlier in Numbers 25 is not paid. They're considered as a hired worker. They're not paid. Now there is a restitution that can happen, like how much they owe, what years of service that they've worked, and if someone's coming in, like a family member or somebody's coming in to basically purchase them out of that indentured servitude, out of that form of slavery, then it actually lays out the calculation, the amount of years that they work, and how that's deducted from their overall debt. And it's the same if an Israelite sold himself to a rich sojourner that was living, a rich resident alien. So, because the sojourners had to they had to abide by the same rules. If they're living in Israel, the Israelites were to be given the same considerations as a hired worker if they were selling themselves to a sojourner, the same as if they were selling themselves to one of their fellow Israelites.
For the big fat lie. So perhaps having someone around who on your panel, like myself, BS, who is biblically literate, perhaps that
No. Well, so first of all, well, not first of all, I don't need to even preface it with this. My other video, the first part of this that I did yesterday, he talked about the is it Numbers 5, the Numbers 5, 11 through it's Numbers 5, 11 through something or other. It's the test, the test for an unfaithful wife, the bitter waters test. He showed his illiteracy. He tried to argue that the Bible, that it's not the water that brings the curse, it's God that brings the curse, when it clearly actually states in there multiple times that it's the water that brings the curse. He was trying to argue that the water, that the water is really nothing. It's just if the woman is unfaithful or has been unfaithful, then God brings a curse. Then God will curse her. And if the woman does this little ceremony and drinks the water and she's been faithful, then God will bless her. That it's nowhere in there. It's the woman that's clean will not be harmed. The curse is set in the water. He doesn't even know how to read that.
might help you in the future. Okay. Perhaps that might help you in the future.
Hey, Nate, the lawyer.
We have someone backstage, but yeah, why don't you put it in the side chat who you are? Because I've never seen you before. Space Cadet? Is this Space Cadet? Why is someone in my backstage as an astronaut? What is this? Is this a joke? Yeah.
Space Cadet. I think that's one of Halsey's. Accounts.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's what's going on?
Man, you hating on my spacesuit, dog? I'm just out here,
Nope, that's not Halcyonic Kaiju.
Floating. I'm just chilling out here, just floating in space,
Yeah, we gotta be careful nowadays, man, because
Oh well, I mean, you've invited the most dangerous one here. Well, you've allowed the most dangerous one here.
Yeah, there's some atheists out here that don't like the fact that people are homo no mo. Hey,
Hey, you know what? You know what? If you look up the ancient Hebrew word for gay,
Uh-oh.
for homosexual, it's literally gay. Like literally.
I don't think that's even remotely true. Um Jeff, my brother says fancy new interface. Well, this is interesting. This is from TomTom. So you pay off your credit card debt by becoming a slave for a time? Essentially, yes, you could do that. If a person was destitute, they could become a slave. But the other way that, like to quote unquote pay off the credit card was to, like, a man could sell his daughter to another guy. You could also sell your kids. In fact, this is one of the ones that it's one of the ones that JiL likes to avoid is 2 Kings 4, where the widow begs, I think it's Elisha, to help her out because her dead husband had debts that were still owed, right? And the creditors were coming to take her 2 kids as slaves.
Literally, it is. You can look it up. Gay.
when a man sells his daughter as a slave. So again, big bad mama. Now you're done. Your narrative of slavery is finished. Now let's talk about the children. The children are under jurisdiction of their parents. Selling a daughter into slavery was tantamount to dedicating her to the temple. So she would be sent off, just like today parents send their.
No, that's not the same thing. He's conflating 2 different things there, I believe. My brother probably could. I'm not gonna try and look through it, but I think he's conflating some other portion of the Old Testament with this. Um, this is in specific reference to Exodus 21 is about a guy who's in debt. He sells his daughter to another person to pay off his debts. And let me just look it up since JiL complains about non-believers being biblically illiterate, and he seems to be conflating this ability. So first, when you buy a male Hebrew slave, he shall only serve 6 years, but in the 7th he shall go out free person, without debt. If he comes in single, he shall go out single, even if he comes in married, when his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out alone. But if the slave declares, I love my master, my wife, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, everybody's heard that one. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, as an Eved, she shall go out as she shall not go out as the male slaves do. If she does not please her master who designated herself for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people, since he has dealt unfairly with her. If he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her as with a daughter. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish the food, clothing, or marital rights to the first wife. And if he does not do these 3 things for her, she shall go out without debt, without payment of money. So it's in restitution of debt. Big Ben, uh-oh, I saw my avatar. Yes, you did. And you were right to throw it up because it throws JiL into kind of like a mild mannered scree, because now he's trying to do all
Their
sorts of
children
stuff.
off to boarding school or dedicate.
This is not the same as selling your kid off to this is not the same thing as sending your kid off to boarding school. He's lying his ass off.
them to
He knows. I honestly think by this time he knows better. He's just lying. He's trying a very piss poor apologetic because he does not want he's invested a lot of his time and effort into this whole there's no slavery in the Old Testament thing. He cannot be convinced. He could be convinced and still act this way.
The Roman Catholic Church, they become altar boys or altar girls. I'm not sure if they have altar girls, right? I don't know. I'm not familiar with Roman.
I don't know what they're
ahead.
even talking about slavery about whenever they're atheists. I mean, what does it even matter? What does it even matter? You know, what's wrong with
Oh, this guy's slick. This guy's bringing up that old tired shit. Well, what does it matter to them? It's whether or not it matters to them. I mean, I don't personally like the idea of being owned to someone else's property, but hey, maybe that's just my subjective opinion. Either way, that's slavery. So do you not so does this guy want to admit that in the narrative it's actually supporting? So regardless of however atheists actually feel about it, let's just address what's there. Is it slavery? Is that slavery being endorsed in the Old Testament? Doesn't matter how an atheist or an agnostic or any other non-believer or a Muslim, it doesn't matter how anybody actually really personally feels about slavery. Is that slavery being endorsed in those scriptures? Yes or no? Guy's a fucking idiot.
slavery? At the end of the day, what's wrong with slavery?
Yeah, you're an atheist, right? You're an atheist.
We still got slavery today. You know, there's slavery
That's right.
that happens all over the place.
And they support it by supporting the Democratic Party. They support slavery. They support the trafficking of children.
Okay, you're going to have to show that one. But that's interesting because you were just appealing to it as though it's a normal thing. Listening while I'm at work and this video popped up. Yeah, I got to get used to this new. I'm still getting used to this interface, but so far I kind of like it. Listening while I'm at work with this video popped up. I laughed out loud with this title when I saw JiL's picture in the thumbnail. Yes. So yeah, objective ethics. There's probably some stuff on here. I don't know. It sounds like he's trying trying and even like if you're going to actually debate this idiot about whether or not the Bible endorses slavery or not, yeah, you're going to see him doing a lot of what he's doing here. He's not going to do what the idiot in the sunglasses is doing. I don't think he stoops to that. But he's going to try to do what he did earlier, where he was talking about, well, he's going to bring up Of Mice and Men, where supposedly Larry and Curly, quote unquote, were going around being Evans and getting paid.
By supporting Biden for 8 years and Obama for 8 years, Biden for 4.
They want to keep him on that plane.
That has absolutely nothing to do with the discussion at hand, with the topic of look, you could be a Trump supporter and still agree that there's freaking endorsement of slavery in the Old Testament. It has no bearing on this whatsoever.
Yeah, we even had liberals on record saying that, like, we got to keep these people here because who else is going to pick this corn? You know, it's crazy.
Well, you had before there were abolitionists, I mean, apparently he doesn't understand. I actually explained this in a video, did a pretty extensive video on the development of the parties in the very early years of our establishing this country of ours, and he still doesn't understand that there were, quote unquote, the party of Jefferson that were very much opposed to slavery. That's where the Democratic Party comes from. So, yeah, and those who were opposed to it, there were actually people who were proponents of slavery, and they were quoting verses. There's a famous, I can't remember, I'd have to look it up. I remember seeing it. I brought it up before. I need to look for it. There was a rabbi that actually wrote a letter showing how scripture supports slavery during those antebellum times.
But yet they open up an ancient text and they see the word slave and they have they don't understand that the word slave.
This book is evil. Even though I don't even believe in it, this book is evil. Even though slavery has been long before that book was even written.
Right. They see the word slave and they automatically assume what they did to my ancestors, the white liberals.
No, not necessarily. Because this slavery wasn't racial. The slavery in the Old Testament is not, that the Old Testament is endorsing, isn't racial slavery. It's ethnic. But I guarantee you, Jill still doesn't understand the difference between ethnic and race. So if you were of the tribe of Israel, that was your ethnicity. If you were a foreigner, you were not of that ethnicity. You were of some foreign ethnicity. And foreigners who were not of the ethnicity of being an Israelite could be purchased as slaves and kept and passed down as property. And even Israelites, fellow Israelites, right, people of the same ethnicity, could become indentured servants, sell themselves to another Israelite. They just didn't. They just were given different considerations, at least under when you read Leviticus 25.
That is. So no, when a man sells a daughter, first of all, the man has full control over his children. You don't, liberal. Not.
Yeah, but Jill, you're missing the part that Big Bad Mama also put that was written. If the father were to sell his male sons into slavery, they would go out on the 7th year. If he sells his daughter does not go out on the 7th year. Why is that? Because that's a bride slave. And if you go to your was that the Slavery Convention? Yeah, it's the 1956, the Supplementary Convention of the Abolition of Slavery. That was 1956. It includes bride wives. Bride wives are slaves. It actually gives it, let's see. So debt bondage. Each of the state parties of the convention shall take all practicable and necessary legislative and other measures to bring about progressively and as soon as possible the complete abolition or abandonment of the following institutions and practices where they still exist and whether or not they are covered by and whether or not they are covered by the definition of slavery contained in Article 1 of the Slavery Convention signed at Geneva on 25 September 1926. Debt bondage, that is to say the status or condition arising from a pledge by a debtor of his personal service or those of a person under his control as security for a debt, if the value of those services as reasonably assessed is not applied towards the liquidation of the debt and the length and nature of those services are not respectively limited and defined. Debt bondage. Serfdom, that is to say the condition or status of a tenant who is by law, custom, or agreement bound to live and labor on land belonging to another person and to render some determined service to such other person, whether for reward or not, and is not free to change his status. And then also any institution or practice whereby a woman without the right to refuse is promised or given in marriage on payment of a consideration in money or in kind to her parent, guardian, family, or any other person group, or the husband of a woman, his family, or his clan has the right to transfer her to another person for value received or otherwise, or a woman on the death of her husband is liable to be inherited by another person. And then any institution or practice whereby a child or young person under the age of 18 is delivered by either or both of his natural parents or by his guardian to another person, whether for reward or not, with the view to the exploitation of that child or young person of his labor, that's also slavery. So Jill is trying to basically argue for slavery. Violations. He is arguing for the violation of the 1956 Slavery Convention, the supplement. Right now. He also just thinks that a slave, that Eved just means hired worker. Objective ethics. That's another thing. Like if you get into, that's funny. Am I in trouble? No. This is Jill's. Jill's got you guys up there. I'm just commenting on Jill's shit. So yeah, you're fine. I'm not here to berate you, Biaslos. If anything, I might defend you. I already had to defend Big Bad Mama. But yeah, that's what. So back to what I was telling Objective Ethics. He was basically essentially saying that everybody is an Evid. Anybody who works is an Evid. So if that comes up in your conversation in a future debate or this upcoming debate that you're going to be having with him, make sure that you catch him on that, because if he will appeal to the Greek or to the Hebrew, right? As whenever it suits him. And the biggest problem with him doing that is that, and you don't even have to stick akuzah, it's the fact that in Leviticus 25, and I can find it real quick here. I think it's I think it's 39. Yes, if any who are dependent on you become so impoverished that they sell themselves to you. So what that means is in this context, it's of any of you Israelites of my people who sell yourself, become so impoverished that they sell themselves to you, to one of your own. You shall not make them serve as slaves. They shall remain with you as a hired or bound laborers. They shall serve you until the year of the Jubilee. Now, that's not a 7th year release, right? So Exodus 21 gives 6 years, and then on the 7th year, that's the sabbatical release. Leviticus 25, that's 50th year. There's better considerations for a fellow Israelite being in this indentured capacity to another Israelite, but they don't go free on their own until the 50th year. The only other way they're getting out of that is through some kind of restitution by family member, friend, whatever. Right? And the word there is that they are to be treated as hired or bound laborers. A hired worker is a sahir. An eved is not a sahir. He's trying to say eved means hired worker or an employee. No. They actually had different words for that even back then. That he jumps over that all the time. He skips it all the time. Like I actually watched him go through it one time with Wildheart. He ran right through this, and he just either he acted like it didn't mean anything when it actually does, or he just honestly didn't know any better. I don't know which anymore. If I remember that, I mean, that was a long conversation between the two of them, and it was insane. The stupidity coming out of his mouth was absolutely, I mean, it was, for him, it was awesome. It was something to behold. He was reading this shit right out of that and getting shit as he was reading it. He was twisting it as he read it. He would completely fuck up something and ignore the context that came before. He'd get to a point and say, see, this is right here. And then he would paraphrase that section, even though the context did not agree with how he was paraphrasing it. And they focused on just Leviticus 25. And I have no idea why the screen keeps flashing like that. I hope it's not flashing for you guys over there. So watch out for that if you have a debate with him. If you're still listening, if you have a debate with him, watch out for that. Because he's going back to this. I mean, he's going back to like square one. Oh, Evids are just workers. An Evid is just a hired worker. An Evid is just like a basketball player who gets contracted to play sports. No.
Neither does Canada. Canada didn't exist where they could tell you you can't send your child to Christian school. You can't have conversion therapy. You can't do this or do that. Okay. So the parents made that decision for the child. And the child is going to grow up working in the temple, probably doing work like cleaning and
that has nothing to do with this, Jill. That Leviticus in Exodus 21, it says exactly what's happening with the girl. But Big Bad Mama posted, it says exactly what's happening to the daughter, and it has nothing to do with cleaning the temple. This is absolutely asinine. It says that she is to, if she does not please her master who's designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people, since he has dealt unfairly with her. If he designates her for his son, right, he shall deal with her as with a daughter. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish the food, clothing, or marital rights of the first wife. So she is essentially she's a bride slave. She is being given as a wife as a way of payment of debt to someone else. And that guy can designate that female for himself or for his son or sons. One of his sons. She doesn't get to go out on the 7th year like the males do. Those other things have to not take place. If he doesn't treat her fairly, if he doesn't do this kind of stuff, then she gets to go out. And that's why it says, shall go out without debt, without payment of money, meaning the debt is wiped free. There's no money that's owed, even because she went in as a slave to this guy, right? In restitution of her father's debt, right? If this happens and she basically is let go, there's no money owed.
task that a woman or a young girl would do because she's been dedicated to the temple as a child.
There's no
okay, that's not.
There's nothing here saying, there's nothing what Big Bad Mama is quoting that has anything to do with a child being dedicated to the temple, Joe. You know exactly what she wrote. You know exactly where that's from. There's no way, after all this time, having the conversations about slavery in the Bible, that you do not know what it is that Big Bad Mama was referring to. Maybe you don't. Maybe I can be a little charitable and saying, maybe you're legitimately having a fucking brain fart. You know better.
Not slavery. Try again, Big Bad Mama. You're big bad. The only thing you're big and bad about doing is reading the Bible.
Incorrectly at that.
Yeah, well,
nope.
Yeah, they're big bad readers of the Bible.
You know, I don't want to get it too off Christian on your channel, so I ain't gonna say it.
Too off what?
Too off Christian.
What is that? What do you mean?
Oh, I mean, there was just I read this peer-reviewed paper. It said Big Bad Mama is I'll let you fill in the blank on that one.
Well, Big Bad Mama.
I bet Wolf thinks that Big Bad Mama is actually a female too.
Here is with B.S. Lewis, and they're trying to talk about the Bible. But I
now you're in trouble, BS. If you're still listening, now you're in trouble. You're on Jill's radar again.
Recommend having at least myself or Wolf, Veckel, somebody who knows what they're talking about. Again, what? Leviticus 20:25.
Hold on a second. This is funny. BS, you're screwed. JiL is proof that inbreeding is a problem in the black community in New York. Damn, son. That's what I thought. Well, it's rarely a good thing to be featured on Jace. It's all good. It's all good.
5 does not help you. Deal with my argument, Big Bad Mama.
That wasn't an argument. You were making the case that whatever that Big Bad Mama was referring to was necessarily about the child being dedicated for service at the temple, when Big Bad Mama was clearly quoting from Exodus 21:7. That's it. Big Bad Mama quoted Exodus 21 verse 7. And the rest of that from 8 through 11 has nothing to do with that daughter, that female, serving in a temple in any way, shape, or form. And the winner of today's Biblical Illiteracy Award goes to now Big Bad Mama is quoting Leviticus 25. Now, let me do this real quick. So Leviticus 25, because Jill was recommending that ignorant readers read the NLT. So what I want to see is so here it is in the New Living Translation. If one of your fellow Israelites falls into poverty and cannot support himself, support him as you would a foreigner or a temporary resident, and allow him to live with you. Do not charge interest or make a profit at his expense. Instead, show your fear of God by letting him live with you as your relative. Now, here's an interesting thing, though. You could charge interest to a foreigner, though. Remember, do not charge interest or money. Lend him to make profit on good of food or sell him. I am the Lord your God. You brought out of the land of Egypt, yada, yada, yada. So now we're going to get into 39, which is where I was at. If one of your fellow Israelites falls into poverty and is forced to sell himself to you, do not treat him as a slave. Treat him instead as a hired worker or as a temporary resident who lives with you, and he will serve you until the year of Jubilee. At that time, he and his children will no longer be obligated to you. They will return to their clans and go back to the land originally allotted to their ancestors. The people of Israel are my servants, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt, so they must never be sold as slaves. Now, this is the dynamic translation that Jill likes to talk about, where this is what people who can't read the Bible, this is where they should go, according to Jill. It's using the word slave, and it says, treat him instead as a hired worker. Then it says, however, then it goes into here. However, you may purchase male and female slaves from among the nations around you. You may also purchase the children of temporary residents who live amongst you, including those who have been born in your land. You may treat them as your property, passing them on to your children as a permanent inheritance. You may treat them as slaves, but you must never treat your fellow Israelites this way. It does not say that the 44 through 46 that the male and female slaves are hired workers. It does not give that exemption, that consideration for them. And it goes on to say they can be passed on as a permanent inheritance. What does it say about an Israelite? They will serve until the year of Jubilee. Jill struggles daily to find his mop to clean the gymnasium after PE class. Possibly. Jill isn't articulate enough to be dangerous. Actually, I did bring you up in the last one, Will. I don't know if you watched it or if you were around for it, because Jill was talking about how atheists or non-believers won't challenge him on the Bible, and I'm like, that's bullshit. I've seen Will Freeman do it multiple times. I have no idea where he was pulling some of the shit he was pulling from. It's like anybody who's watched any of the videos, like where he's been in on Hillary's emails channel. You guys would talk about this kind of shit. I'm like, I don't think Will's ever had a problem challenging you on this shit, Joe. He's like, these people are afraid of me. No, a lot of times they just get tired of talking to you because you're obtuse.
How many
Just
slaves?
seeing
How many slaves did Jesus have?
Well, I'm a slave of Jesus. That's
You're
the
a
point I'm making.
servant. You're a
Right.
servant.
Right. So the word slave does
There
not
goes.
mean chattel slave here. Go ask Dr. Josh.
That means chattel slave. Yes, if you ask Dr. Josh what that means, he will say that is chattel slavery. In Leviticus 25:39, that's indentured servitude. That we still consider as a type of slavery. That's even under the slavery convention. That's chattel slavery.
I've debated on this. He doesn't even argue anymore that Leviticus 25 is talking about chattel slaves.
Yes, he has. Just not with you, but he has.
Has to try to go over to Deuteronomy 20 to make that argument where war is being waged.
No, that's another example of chattel slaves. And in Numbers 31, where the Midianites are taken. The women and the females are taken, and it actually tells you how those women, the females, they shouldn't be women, it's females, because it's the females who have not been with men, and there were so many thousands of them, and then it tells you how they were divided amongst with the plunder. That's chattel slavery.
Failed again. So yes, you may purchase them if they want to be purchased. There's nothing in the text that speaks to someone.
No. Yes, if you purchase someone, even if they want to be purchased, that's still slavery, Joe. That's the other thing, objective ethics. You have to watch out for that, because that can be an argument in and of itself, because he still thinks that in order for slavery to be slavery, kidnapping and forced labor must take place. You have to kidnap them and force them to work against their will. Only then is it slavery.
Someone being forced to be purchased.
He has a real hard time with the concept that slavery is the concept where property is applied to other human beings. Well, just to human beings in general. It's the idea that humans can be that they can be property. They can be bartered, they can be sold, they can be traded, all that kind of shit. They can be that's the whole point of slavery. The racism part, that's a justification. Ethnic things, ethnic considerations, that can come into play too. But the very basic thing about slavery is that it's just about property. It doesn't matter how the property is obtained. In fact, I will go to Slavery Convention in 1926. Since this is something that he brought up, he brought it in a long time ago. The way that the Slavery Convention defines slavery, it says slavery is the status or condition of a person over whom any or all of the powers attaching to the right of ownership are exercised. It does not say anything about how that is acquired. Now, the slave trade includes all acts involved in the capture, acquisition, or disposal of a person with intent to reduce him to slavery. All acts involved in the capture, acquisition, or disposal of a person with intent to reduce him to slavery. So, if I acquire a person as property, even of their own will, so that I have certain rights of ownership can be exercised over them, that's slavery. It says nothing about kidnapping in this sense. There is no definition of slavery, as far as I can tell, that says a slave is someone who is kidnapped and forced to work. He went to this as the definitive definition. For some fucking reason, this autoplayed after me listening to the Dead South on YouTube while I'm baking. I'm sorry, Nicola. That's not my fault. How goes the baking? Halcyonic Kaiju says, I wonder if JiL would enjoy being a slave in biblical times. He probably would have.
The only people that were forced were criminals, because that is the way the
No, they didn't have. There's nothing saying. There's no data that says that at all. That's him negotiating with the text saying, well, of course these people were criminals because they were doing bad things.
ancient people forced you to pay back restitution.
Yeah.
Unlike you today, where someone commits a crime against children and you let them out of prison the next day.
No.
And then you,
Since when? If you're talking, JiL, if you're talking about like the way that certain like quote unquote liberal cities have gotten lax with like charging people with certain like shoplifting offenses and stuff like that, that doesn't necessarily mean that they would let out child molesters. Those kind of crimes rank a little higher on the scale than shoplifting. But okay.
Bail.
oh, no cash bail.
Yeah, that's for only for certain offenses. That wouldn't be in cases of rape, murder. It was only in certain offenses. No cash bail was for certain offenses, not all offenses, JiL.
Sorry, but the ancients had a way to punish, and that was their way to punish, by forcing you to work and pay restitution. If you stole someone's cow,
how could you steal someone's cow if nobody owned anything? Here's the other thing, JiL. Now you're saying if someone steals another cow, so what does it mean when a person purchases a cow? What does that mean? Because you seem to have this problem, because when the conversation comes up about, in this particular sense, when a person purchases, according to Leviticus 25, 44 through 46, this specifically says, however, you may purchase male or female slaves from among the foreigners who live among you. Right? They are to be your, they become your property. They're your akuza, right? And the term here is purchase, right? So if I purchase a cow, and you've argued that purchasing means something totally different, meant something totally different to the ancient Israelites. So if the Israelite that you're referring to bought a cow and somebody stole the cow, then they get restitution because it was their cow, right? They bought it. That means they owned it, right? So the only way that they can get restitution for it is with some kind of society's recognition of ownership, right? Like this kind of very basic idea of property rights. I had money, I bought that cow, bill of sale, whatever, witnesses to it, that's my cow. Some other person comes, steals my cow, then I go around looking for it. I get with the authorities. That person is found who has stolen my cow. They're punished for having stolen my cow. I get my cow back. Or let's say they stole my cow, killed my cow, ate my cow. I'm still owed some kind of restitution, right? Why would I be owed restitution? I'd be owed restitution. So if that concept of purchasing, owning, and someone taking it applies, they have that in mind, then this idea of purchasing male or female slaves and owning them and having them as property and passing them down as an inheritance should go along the same mental state, right? Right? If I have a cow, or if I have a farm or a ranch or whatever, and this is all of my property, the land, the things that are grown on it, and all the livestock, and then I pass all of that down to my kids as an inheritance, isn't that my property that I've passed down as an inheritance to my children? That's another thing you're gonna have to watch out for, objective ethics. He's going to try to walk his way right out of that word purchase. Even though he just walked himself right into it right here, right? You deserve people deserve restitution. If someone steals a cow, how can they steal a cow? How do we now read the Bible to where we can now delineate between, okay, a person can purchase a cow and that's theirs, and if someone steals it, then they're owed restitution. But in this other verse where it says you can purchase your male and female slaves and they can be your property and you can pass them down as inheritance, now we have to look at this completely different. How does that happen? How do we do that, Jill?
You had to work for them until that
You
debt
pay
was
off your
paid.
debt.
Right. Sorry
It's
that
a,
offends you.
it's a crazy concept, Jill. You
Well, actually, hold on a second. Went from dark bluegrass music to Jill. Sorry, Nicola. Again, not my problem. they, they are like a pet. I want to address this real quick. He paints a picture of slavery as if the slaves were well cared for, appreciated, even loved by the family. Part of the family, even. Yes, actually, that can be the case. That could actually be the case. It would not change their status as property, though. And it would not change the fact that if I went to their house and took their slaves, that they could still get, and if I killed their slaves, they could still get restitution. So like let's look at it this way, Halsey. Uh, I have a slave. The slave is well cared for. I treat my slaves very well. They're cared for. I treat them as part of the family. I send my slave out, right, to go run some errands for me, right? I trust them to go do that. They go into town, they were running some errands for me, I give them some money and everything, and then they get gored by an ox. Do you know what happens to the owner of the goring ox if that slave gets killed? They pay me the money to buy another slave. That's when an ox gores a man or a woman to death, the ox shall be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall not be liable. If the ox has been accustomed to gore in the past, and the owner has been warned but did not restrain it, and it kills a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner shall be put to death. If a ransom is imposed on the owner, then the owner shall pay whatever is imposed on the redemption of the victim's life. If it gores a boy or a girl, the owner shall be dealt with according to the same rule. If the ox gores a male or female slave, the owner shall pay to the slave owner 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. There's still their silver. Look at it this way. The slave is just like my car, kind of. I own my car. My car is my property. I treat my car very well. I take care of it. I keep it well maintained. I keep it clean. I keep it detailed. I don't drive it like I don't care. I'm not going to trash it. I don't beat on it. Nothing. You could do the same thing with slaves. Would not change the status of their property as property in any way, shape, or form. Don't fall into that trap. Because the idea that in order to be a slave, there must be some abuse. No. That'll take you down. That's a hard art. Even though some slaves were abused, abuse doesn't necessitate slavery. But yeah, I do like what yeah. They are like a pet. Here's Tom with the weather. Why did the Hebrews need to be rescued from Egypt if slavery wasn't slavery? That becomes a problem too. That's a good point. This is something that JiL also has brought up, but in the process of us discussing it in a comment thread, he seemed to forget that. Because he tries to talk about well, their concept of slavery wasn't like our concept of slavery, while completely wanting us to kind of ignore the fact that there's this narrative where the Israelites were slaves in Egypt for supposedly for 400 years, according to the narratives, right? And then they're released from that, and then what happens? Pharaoh wants to get them back, but they get away. Right? The whole parting of the Red Sea, that whole thing, right? So how could they not have this idea of what slavery is? If they're the property of, were they criminals? Is that what JiL wants to argue? Were the Israelites, because the Israelites were slaves to Egypt, does that mean they were criminals, JiL? Because that's what he's trying to argue, right? He's trying to argue, well, these were criminals. They had to be punished. That's why these people were taken in. That's why these people were forced to work. Really? Is that what happened to the Israelites for 400 years in Egypt?
That's wild, bro.
Well-
I mean, are you speaking logic here? I didn't know that was allowed on the internet.
Well, remember, these are beta male Bernie Sanders supporters. So
Yeah.
I think Wolf needs to just pick up a copy and actually read the fucking Bible before he just sits there and simps for JiL, because this is pretty pathetic.
remember,
I think
he wants to get rid of debt. He wants to get rid of student loan debt. Even though they voluntarily took out the debt, they're not going to be forced to pay it back.
No one's saying that. That's the whole point of it. And all those debts were forgiven at the year of Jubilee anyway. JiL doesn't even realize that. They actually had a system in place where all those debts were forgiven anyway. On the 50th year, all debts were fucking forgiven. Everything reset. He's completely forgotten about that too. Everybody goes back. Everything is done.
That's a violation of scripture.
No, it's not. Because again, when the Jubilee hits, everything resets. So even if a man has become so destitute in Israel that he's handed over his property to someone else, his property has become the property of someone, his land has become the possession of some other Israelite, right? And he's been destitute. And then through the years and whatever's happened, even of his children, and as the years progress, on the year of Jubilee, all that resets. That land, that person, even if the original person who is allotted that land dies, it goes back to the family. It all resets. All debts are wiped clean on the 50th year. JiL forgot about that. You're not always, in some cases, you are not forced to pay back your debt. Come Jubilee, everything resets. All debts are stricken. Everybody goes back to the lands that they were allotted. Everything is reset.
The Bible says you pay back what you owe.
And you reap what you sow.
You reap what you sow, and stop relying on government to pay your bills, to feed you.
Yep. Start a bit.
They were relying on God. This is a theocracy.
Business. Dang, man, is it that difficult?
Do
Go work at
something
Walmart. Do something.
besides spread diseases.
Man, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can call Big Bad Mama a beta male whenever it's a man with a woman avatar. I mean, that's a conundrum
Oh, he does. Okay, so Wolf does realize Big Bad Mama's actually okay.
in its own. I don't know. Make it make sense, Joe. Make it make sense.
I thought he was a woman when I first seen him on. I thought that was actually him or her.
And that was an ugly woman.
Or he, she, or something. I didn't know what he was, but you never know what you're going to get when you're talking to these atheists. You never know.
Be funny if that was Big Bad Mama's mother.
Life is like a box of chocolates.
You motherfuckers! That's a picture of my mom. God damn it!
Some of them might have nuts.
Slavery in my
This Wolf guy has just. I mean, he's just raised the level of this fucking stream.
There was property damage rules in place for Old Testament slaves. Like if you killed
There was property damage rules. This is more gaslighting. No,
that's property damage rules.
there's no such thing as property damage rules, as if there are some sort of commodity. Like,
Yes, the goring ox narrative, Jill. If you break their teeth, they go out. If you knock out an eye, they go out. They go out for nothing.
a chair or a couch.
No, not quite, but close.
Property damage rules. So
More like what Nicholas said, a pet.
because they can't deny the scriptures that clearly protect the slave, protect the Aved. And remember, when we say slave, we mean worker.
Nope. It's a slave. And yes, there are, yes. And that's why there's some protections, but not a lot of protections. The protections are if you knock out the tooth. It's not like Salionis. It is not eye for eye, tooth for tooth. It's not stripe for stripe, life for life, none of that. The slave does not get lex talionis. If their eye gets knocked out, they go for free, go out for free. If their tooth gets knocked out or broken, they go out for free. The person that owned them does not have to lose an eye or have a tooth knocked out. The punishment is that master, the owner of that slave, loses that money. I mean, it says right here in Exodus 21. Is this still the? Nope, it's still the NRSVU. Whoever strikes a person mortally shall be put to death. If it was not premeditated, became but whoever strikes father or mother shall be put to death. Here we go. When a slave owner strikes a male or female slave with a rod and the slave dies immediately, the owner shall be punished. Doesn't say put to death though. It says punished. In some verses it says avenged, but that doesn't mean put to death. But if he recovers and walks around outside with help of a staff, and the assailant shall be free of liability. No, I'm sorry. But if the slave survives a day or two, there is no punishment, for the slave is the owner's property. In some translations, it says, for he is his master's silver. That's, in fact, I'll go right to Jill's NLT. So you can do this. If you're still listening, Objective Ethics, you can still do this. I think if you're still listening, Objective Ethics, I think it was you he was recommending go read the NLT translation. I think that's where I heard that from. It says, if a man beats his, so this is the NLT's translation, the dynamic translation here. If a man beats his male or female slave with a club and the slave dies as a result, the owner must be punished. But if the slave recovers within a day or two, then the owner shall not be punished, since the slave is his property. Now, what did Jill say about, like, if someone steals someone's cow, that's their property, they get restitution, right? Now this one, it gives it very interesting. If it goes into the goring ox, and it says, but if the ox gores a slave, either male or female, the animal's owner must pay the slave owner 30 silver coins. The ox must be stoned. So he's the slave's owner is, that's restitution for loss of property.
Because remember, the currency in the ancient Near East is work. That's how you paid for everything.
No, you just said that Evids got paid. How did you pay for everything with work if you said earlier that Evids got paid? How does that work, Joe? If work is the currency, how do Evids get paid? So if I want to buy something, I just work for whatever I want. I don't have to get paid anything, right? So if I go to a shopkeeper, if I go to a merchant and they're selling chickens, how do I pay for the chickens? Oh, well, the currency is work. So I work for the shopkeeper for a little bit, and at least enough to acquire a chicken. That's what it sounds like you're saying, Joe. But then you said, well, by the way, Evids get paid. They paid their Evids. No, not if the currency was work. You just worked for whatever you wanted. You want a cow? Work for the cow. You want a house? Work for the house.
They didn't have Benjamins back then. It's all about the Benjamins.
They didn't have Benjamins. So they didn't. Wait, Jill, I get what you're doing here. You're using that particular slang, meaning money. Are you saying they didn't have any kind of like? Is it your wait?
They didn't have monetary or dollar bills and coins. They did, but it wasn't something that everyone had, that was
privy
circulated.
to.
Right. This was something that if you were one of the elite, you might have had a coin.
Where are you getting that from? So if you got a sahir, if you got a hired laborer, you paid them in coin, would they not then have coin? Coin is normally used, it's exchanged for goods and services. How did you do this, Jill? What are you doing? Oh, objective ethics. You're going to have fun with this. And you need to actually probably go and find some of this shit so that you can quote him on this crap. Because this is stupid.
With the Caesar's head on or face on it. But most of the people, when they contracted with others, it was work
based.
A hired worker would be contracted. Yeah. A hired worker would work and they would be worth their wages. They would be paid wages. They'd be paid so much. So look, dude, if a person owns a cow and or owns an ox and their ox gores another person's slave, they use coin to compensate the owner of the slave. It doesn't sound like silver coins were that rare, or whatever they used for coinage. They could have used stones. It doesn't matter. They used some kind of they had some kind of valued monetary units. So what the fuck are you doing? Now you're saying, oh, well, that kind of liquid wealth, money, would have been only reserved for the elites. How? So if a guy is working and gets paid a certain amount of money, so if you're a farmer and you have an ox, you're one of the elite? Okay.
Work-based contractual agreements. I will work for you for this bear. No, not a bear. But nobody wants a bear, not especially the bears that mauled those kids that were making fun of the prophet. All right.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like the bears, like the gay ones or whatever. But you know how they call them bears and whatnot. But
those were gay bears back then, the ones that mauled those kids. That
I
were
don't
making
know.
fun
I
of
don't want to
Elijah.
assume that. You know, I think the what is it? The I forgot what the legal term is, but whatever.
Okay.
I forgot what I was going to say. Continue on. Oh yeah, no, it's crazy. It's crazy to think. You know, it's like, oh, I have no money. I have nothing to offer you. Okay, all right. Well, then you know what? I'll let you work for me. I'm going to give you a set of rules.
That's right.
That doesn't make any sense. If there's nothing what do you listen to why we put that? That
You know, it's like, oh, I have no money. I have nothing to offer you. Okay, all right. Well, then you know what? I'll let you work for me. I'm going to give you.
then now I'll let you work for me. He completely fucked up his own example. I have no money. I've got nothing. I'll let you work for me. Why would they want to work for you if you've got nothing? If you've got nothing to offer, how are you going to give them anything to work for you? I think he means if I've got nothing and maybe somebody is willing to offer me work. But again, Leviticus 25 lays out multiple scenarios in which a fellow Israelite So it says here's Leviticus 25:35 again. If one of your fellow Israelites falls into poverty, right? So let Mr. Wolf there being an idiot, they have nothing to offer. They're impoverished and cannot support himself. The person cannot support themselves. Support him as you would a foreigner or as a temporary resident and allow him to live with you. Do not charge interest or make profit at his expense. Instead, show your fear of God by letting him live with you as your relative. Remember, do not charge interest on money you lend him or make profit on food you sell him. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan and to be your God. And then it says, if one of your fellow Israelites falls into poverty and is forced to sell himself to you, do not treat him as a slave. Treat him instead as a hired worker or as a temporary resident who lives with you, and he will serve you until the year of Jubilee. Again, JiL's trying to enforce this idea that the Bible is strict on this idea that you must pay off your debts. But come the year of Jubilee, which obviously is not until the 50th year, still the point of it, everything was reset. How do people get into debt if the currency is working for something? If the only way I can purchase anything is by working for it, where is the debt? What am I borrowing to get into debt for? And like it says here, you can loan them money, just don't loan them anything at interest. And this was an Israelite with another Israelites dealing with impoverished Israelites. JiL doesn't believe in paying off one's debts. This is funny. JiL doesn't believe in paying off one's debts. Bitch still owes me $100. I remember that. The basketball fucking thing. That was hilarious. It was so bad. He got owned so hard by JiL got owned so hard by Nicola. It wasn't even funny. He's like, yeah, pay me $100, bitch. He's like, wow, hold on a second.
you a set of rules.
That's right. Yeah.
I wish I could find that video. That was so fucking. I think that was one of my streams. It might have been. Anyway, it was hilarious.
And you work to pay off your debt or whatever, whatever.
How did you idiots? There's the fucking elephant in the room. How did you get debt? If the money is restricted to the elites and everybody just basically worked for whatever they needed to get, work was the primary currency. How did anyone get in debt? How did anybody who's not an elite accrue debt? Tell me how this works, how this economic system works. But again, Jill earlier said, well, Evans got paid. Paid in what? Not because I obviously couldn't get paid in money because Jill, now you're saying, well, the coin, the idea of money, that was meant for the elites. Then what were the Evans paid in? Manure?
It's I
This
mean,
is
it's
not
Or
like,
they paid him in what? Food, clothing? What did you mean by they paid their Evans? Paid them in what then? If it wasn't cash, what was it? If it wasn't money of some kind, what were they getting paid? Well, whatever it is that they were working for. Oh, so they came there with a set item in mind and said, "Hey, I'll work for you for so long in order to get these particular items." Yeah, that's it. So how did they get debt? How are they paying off debt? How does anyone have debt in this system? This is insane.
it's not rocket science. I mean,
It isn't.
You sure? Because you guys are missing how someone accrues debt in a system with no money. What they can go buy, grab something that they want, and then leave an IOU and say, "There's my debt. I'll come back and work for that later."
I don't. That's why I don't understand. Why am I debating so-called scholars on this?
oh, I mean,
If you just
he looks at rocks, bro.
if you just open up a novel,
Oh my God. Let's not talk about you opening up novels, shall we? You already claimed that the main characters of Steinbeck's Of Men and Mice was Larry and Curly. Come on, Jill. At least it was your stream. He bet me $100 he never compared NBA players to slaves. So I screen shared your live chat of him saying that in that screen. Oh yeah, that's funny. I do remember that. Yeah, that was stupid on his part. I can't. He's got the memory of a gnat or something.
that they used to read in high school, they don't anymore for some reason, or middle school, of Mice and Men, you'll see the same type of
With the main characters of Larry and Curly.
system in America not too long ago.
You mean where migrant workers were working on going and finding work where they could, and then possibly getting like living in a bunk house as a ranch hand, but also getting paid a particular wage, maybe not a lot, but getting paid in money so that they could go out and buy certain sundries for themselves. Like they could go into town, they could buy toothpaste, they could buy underwear, possibly save up enough money to buy new shoes to work, clothes, that kind of stuff, goods and services. Sure. But that's not what you're arguing here, Jill. You're arguing that nobody used money in the during the Depression era of fucking. If we're to believe how you're doing this, you're saying that during the Depression era of the United States, it was the same as ancient Israel, where everybody just worked for what they wanted. Work was the currency of the time. No one got paid. Money was only for the elites. This is insane. Actually, this isn't insane. This is stupid. Insane is completely the wrong word. I have to completely correct myself. He's stupid.
few decades ago. They were called workers, migrant workers.
A few decades ago? A few decades ago? Okay.
People who traveled from town to town. And yes, you had to abide by the master's rules because it was his land. Duh.
They weren't the master. They weren't considered a master. That was the boss, not a master. They didn't own them as slaves. And they could leave whenever they wanted. They were migrant workers. They could work for a particular amount of time, get whatever money they needed, and then they'd be like, oh, something come up. I got to leave. And they could leave. Just like today, you give 2 weeks notice or no notice, just leave. You weren't a master's. There was no, in this narrative, there's no masters, Jill. I don't know where you're getting, how you are able to take the narrative of the novel or novella, actually it's a novella, of Mice and Men, and then say this is analogous to what's happening in ancient Israel. In these narratives. It's dumb.
So when you start seeing other passages where there are rules now about who you can marry, who you can't marry, that would have already been agreed upon by the worker. That's not something he's being forced into.
What are you talking about?
So again, you fail at demonstrating involuntary service, involuntary servitude, other than in the case of prisoners and people.
No. Well, if you want, if that's your only thing, shit, Jill, there's some voluntary service right here. And I'll even read it in your New Living Translation, since that's the one that you recommend for us fucking ignorant non-believers. One day, the widow of a member of the group of prophets came to Elisha and cried out, "My husband who served you is dead, and you know how he feared the Lord, but now a creditor has come threatening to take my 2 sons as slaves." "What can I do to help you?" Elisha asked. "Tell me what do you have in the house?" "Nothing at all, except a flask of olive oil," she replied. And Elisha said, "Borrow as many empty jars as you can from your friends and neighbors, then go into your house with your sons and shut the door and bling, 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 bling on all that. And then you can pay off." There's this miracle that occurs with one single jar of oil that fills multiple jars of oil, and she sells them off, which is interesting because she's selling oil off in borrowed containers. Let me read it. "Borrow as many empty jars as you can from your friends and neighbors. Then go into your house with your sons and shut the door behind you. Pour olive oil from your flask into the jars, setting each one aside when it is filled." So she did as she was told. Her sons kept bringing jars to her, and she filled one after another. Soon every container was full to the brim. "Bring me another jar," she said to one of her sons. "There aren't any more," he told her, and then the olive oil stopped flowing. When she told the man of God what had happened, he said to her, "Now sell the olive oil and pay for your debts, and you and your sons can live on what is left over." She sold borrowed containers. But still doesn't change the fact that the reason she's asking for Elisha's help is because her dead husband owned debts, and the creditors are coming to take her 2 sons as slaves. And she doesn't, and it's against her will. He's not saying, Elisha doesn't say it's wrong. He just helps her to pay off the debt so her kids don't get taken as slaves. You notice he doesn't tell them to just stop, right? No, you have to find a way for her to work off that debt. You can't come and take your sons as slaves. And how else was she going to pay it off? Why would she be worried? If all she has to do is work for whatever she needs, how did her husband end up with owing anyone? No, Yeah, Robin. He's absolutely a walking, talking, absolutely delusional strawman. He absolutely, and yes, I agree. He is. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here we go. This one's funny. I then told him I'd take $100 in the form of him presenting a receipt for a $100 donation to the Trevor Project. A week later, he offered $100 to Chick-fil-A. I agreed. Never received it. Gave him my burner email and everything for him to send the e-card. Instead, I was inundated with stream invites. So I responded with links to gay porn. No, I can't see shit. Yeah, so yeah, are BS and BBM here or on video? No, they're on JiL's video. So JiL is looking at a stream over there. It looks like BS Lewis. Maybe it's BS Lewis's channel. I don't know. Either way, he's sharing that out. And every once in a while he was doing this live stream, Big Bad Mama commented. So JiL blocked that email. Yeah. You know what's interesting is he never, I don't think he ever blocked. Maybe he did block. I know I have his email blocked. Everything that he sends me goes to spam. He still sends me a bunch of shit.
People who commit crimes or people who commit crimes. Those people have no rights.
Yes, they do. People who commit crimes have limited rights. Even today, they have limited rights. They don't have the same rights as free citizens, but they have limited rights.
Just like
until they work it off.
Until they work it off. Do they pay restitution?
Wow, it's crazy.
We call it community service today. It's the same concept.
Why would they need to pay off? Why would a nation, JiL, this is absolutely absurd. You have nation states, and so you have Israel as a developing as a nation state, and then let's say you have the Amalekites as a nation state, right? And they're their own thing, right? Now, obviously there was some problems when the Israelites were coming out of Israel, according to the Bible, according to Genesis, and they got attacked by the Amalekites and they beat the Amalekites, right? And then generations go on. And then you get King Saul. And then King Saul is told to go kill the Amalekites, right? But either way, you have these individual tribal nations. They're not committing crimes. There's no global, there's no NATO, there's no joint understanding of things. This isn't right. Historically speaking, this isn't the same. This isn't the same as today. You have the Israelites who are who are basically foreigners in a new land, right? They're coming into the promised land. Coming into the promised land, there's all sorts of these other, when you read the Old Testament, there's all these other nation states, right? These other tribes, if you would, right? So if the Israelites go and they attack they attack the Midianites or the Amalekites or the Moabites, what crime did the Moabites and the Amalekites and the Midianites do in and of themselves that would require restitution? Because you're acting as though the Israelites were the predominant, like the Midianites. So this is the other problem. He's acting as, I think what he's insinuating is the other neighboring nation states are committing quote unquote crimes against humanity. I think that's the hidden thing that he's insinuating, because he's argued this before. Like, well, these people were like eating goats, eating children or fucking, all sorts of horrible things, which he's never shown any evidence, right? This is This is a common apologetic that is used for any of the stuff that you read in the Old Testament about the Israelites going to war with anyone, or the order of the genocide of the Amalekites, right? Or it was chemical warfare, right? Or because they were plagued, God sent them in there to kill them off because of, to eliminate said plague, which is absolutely asinine, right? And a lot of times JiL has actually messed up the Midianites because it was the plague of Peor with the Midianites, and then later Numbers 31, they go, oh yeah, remember that plague that happened because Israelites were going around and participating in the Midianites' pagan ways, and God was like, and so he struck the Israelites with a plague. Then later on, they go, yeah, remember that plague? Now you can go and kill the Midianites for what they for that plague. It wasn't the Midianites' fault. They didn't force the Israelites to fucking do that shit, did they? It doesn't say that they did. It says that while the Israelites were encamped with the Midianites or with the Midianites, they started basically, some of them started doing, started participating in the Midianites' practices, which God, being a jealous God, doesn't like. But what happens? Instead of bygones being bygones, the Israelites go to war with the Midianites, kill all of them except for the women, or supposed to kill all of them, but they keep the women. And then Moses goes, well, wait, what's with these women? Why are these women here? And they go, oh, well, we thought we could keep them. And he goes, well, you can keep the ones that haven't been with men. And then they divvy them up as plunder. Where was the restitution in that narrative, Joe? Where's the restitution in the narrative?
I don't, unless you can prove otherwise, unless you can go into the context and prove otherwise, you don't have an argument. Just showing me the word slave, showing me the word purchase. Jay Pasick tried this and failed. So you doing it is not going to help the argument.
I've done it multiple times. I can't help it if you don't agree. It's not a failure on my part if you just don't agree, JiL. That's not a failure on my part. You just don't agree with it. Because you're stuck in la Christian apologetic mode, where there's no way that your warm and fluffy God could ever condone slavery. Well, this is just good responsibility for human beings. If you owe debts, you pay them off like a good little trooper. If people aren't worshiping my God and they're not brushing their teeth and doing what they're supposed to do, well then, by golly, the Israelites had every right to go into that nation and fuck them up, because they weren't worshiping what I worship and they weren't brushing their teeth. There's nothing in the narratives. I don't even think we have any archaeological evidence that supports that any of the tribes that are mentioned in the Old Testament were engaged in any kind of like weird sex shit. And even if they were, the Israelites probably were too. For fuck's sake, he brought up Joseph. He brought up the story of Joseph and Rachel. Joseph wanted to bone his own niece. And he did. Both of them. First, he promises his uncle that he'll serve him for 7 years for Rachel's hand in marriage. Works for 7 years, but then his uncle doesn't give him Rachel. He gives him his younger daughter, which is Leah. So, okay. What does Joseph do? Well, I don't want that one, but all right. It says he goes into her, but he still wants Rachel. So he promises another 7 years of servitude to his uncle. His uncle gives him Rachel as a wife, and he fucks her too. So apparently, JiL is perfectly fine with working for your uncle to fuck your nieces. because that's what that narrative is about. Yeah, I like this. The Shepherd's Ambassador wrote on this channel, was slavery in the Bible mostly about working off debts, or did it extend beyond a mere working off debts? It could extend beyond that. Amongst the Israelites, it was about working off debts. But if they wanted male, because of what Leviticus 25 lays out, where the conditions by which a fellow Israelite is as a slave, an Israelite is as an indentured servant, is to be, they could be considered as a hired worker. That's not, however, the conditions that are necessarily laid out in Exodus 21. You have different conditions. Exodus 21, I think it's Deuteronomy 20. Oh, wait, nope. I think it's in Deuteronomy 15. The conditions that are laid out in Exodus 21 are not the same as Deuteronomy 15. They're very similar. At the difference, one of the major differences is that in Deuteronomy 15, when your male slave, it's actually for both male and female slaves get to go out on the 7th year. Whereas in Exodus 21, it's only the male slave that goes out on the 7th year. The other thing is that in Deuteronomy 15, they are to be provisioned before they go free, so that they don't fall back into debt. That's not in Exodus 21.
Was slavery in the Bible mostly about working off debts? Did it extend beyond mere working off debt? No, it was mostly about working off debt.
So he's agreeing that it was slavery. What he should have objected to was, no, so I've got to object to the idea that there was even slavery to begin with, that this was just basically workers. This is all just about people working for a living, working to pay off debt. Everybody's a free citizen. Everybody works for what they get. However they get debt, who knows, because he hasn't clarified that up based on whatever it is that he's running here. So he should have disagreed with the Shepherd's Ambassador 5146 by saying slavery wasn't actually a thing. He shouldn't agree to the actual terms of slavery. Because to him, slavery only means if you're kidnapped and forced to work again, if you're kidnapped and forced to work. Which I don't know why he adds that. It's just the kidnapping part should be, what does he think, that if you're kidnapped and you're just kidnapped, then that doesn't mean you're a slave? So if I kidnap someone and then sell them to someone, they weren't ever a slave? That's actually subjective ethics. If you're still listening while you're at work, you might want to ask, that might be one you want to take note of, because JiL says that in order to be, he basically says his position is that in order to be a slave, the person has to be kidnapped and forced to work against their will. So I would ask him this question. If he's still stuck on that, you could ask him that. If that's what he thinks slavery necessarily is, right? If he doesn't agree with even with the definition of slavery given in, because I know you've read Dr. Josh's book, and even if you use the 1926 Slavery Convention, but if he holds that slavery is the definition of, like, has to be a person who is kidnapped and is forced to work against their will, right? Neat. Ask him, if I was to kidnap someone and then sell them to someone else, I never forced them to work. I kidnapped a person. I never forced that person to work, but I sold them to someone else. Is that person a slave? Is that slavery? Because they're not being sold. They're not being forced to work. At this particular point, I'm just taking people as like almost like commodities so that I can now sell them to people who might need to have them work. So are they still a slave even though they're not being forced to work yet? How does this work?
Some scholars suggest about 95 to 99% of it was about working. Working.
I what did he say? Did he just appeal to imaginary scholarship again?
Was slavery in the Bible mostly about working off debts? Did it extend beyond mere working off debt? No, it was mostly about working off debt. Some scholars suggest about 95 to 99% of it was about working. Working.
Well, okay, he really did not catch that. Okay, so slavery was about working. Neat.
Period. As far as debt collection is concerned, I don't think it was that high. But most of the workers were aveds. They were just people who were not landowners.
You mean workers were just aveds? What does that mean? The workers were just aveds. You mean the workers were just workers? They were just employees? They were hired laborers? Is that what you're saying? Because that's not the word, that's not the Hebrew word for a hired laborer.
Or they were not rich. You or I don't know about you, but I would have
rich in
been
Christ.
I would have been an aved. Okay. Actually, I don't know if I would have been an aved. I might have been an owner.
I know a few of that.
No, I would have been an aved. I think I would have been an aved.
How could you have been an owner of anything? What does an owner mean? You told me ownership means something entirely different, Joe. What does it mean to be an owner in ancient Israel? What does that mean? How could you be an owner of anything? And even if you do own things, right? And if work is the currency, you're still technically, right? Are all workers, isn't everybody who is working and to work in order for work is being used as the currency in order to get things so that they can own them? This is absolutely asinine.
It depends.
I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, an aved is a worker, just someone who's an employee, because you don't own your own land.
No, it's not an employee. It's that word is roughly translated as a worker, but the way that it's the context in the scriptures and the way that word is used. That's why it's translated in English to be slave. Because it's here is a hired worker and eved is something else. And like it says in Leviticus 25, 44 through 46, as for your male and female eveds, you may purchase them from the nations around them. These are your akuzah. You can pass them down as an inheritance.
You would have to find someone else to work for, just like you don't own your own corporation. So you go fill out an application for someone who does own corporations. So in those days.
So wait, you don't, but what did you say?
Someone else to work for, just like you don't own your own corporation. So you go fill out an application for someone who does own corporations.
How are you doing this?
So in those days, and again, up until about 100 years ago, even in America, 50 years ago, you would travel to whoever owned land and you would contract with them to work. So unless you can.
Yeah, do you know why? Because they abolished slavery, you dipshit. And not everybody did. Some people did. It's called being a migrant laborer. And the reason you weren't they couldn't buy you as property is because slavery was abolished. You could hire on as a farmhand, and they had to pay you a wage or whatever they could. But then again, 19 Depression era United States, I'm not sure exactly. I don't know how strict the fucking labor laws were back then. But obviously, slavery was already abolished.
You can find kidnapping and people being forced to work against their will in the context. You really don't have an argument.
You don't need that for slavery. And again, you can find it in the text. You can find it in 2 Kings 4. You can find it in Exodus 21. 7 through, what was that? 7 through 11? Seven. It's 7 through 11. That's being done against her will. She's not being kidnapped. They are being forced against their will. The agency of the daughter is not there. She's being given over as a bride wife. The 1956 supplement says that that's slavery. The two children being forced by who are going to be taken by the creditors in 2 Kings 4, that's slavery. They're being taken away from their mother against their will in payment of debt. And kidnapping wasn't wrong for Israelites to do to other nations. It was only wrong to kidnap another Israelite. Members of the tribes of Benjamin who didn't have any wives, they kidnapped women to make as their wives. This wasn't frowned upon. They weren't punished by God. They weren't killed for it. What one is that? I think that's in I'm forgetting the verse. Judges 21. It's got damn more Jay Pasick. Yep, more boring ass me. I'm gonna do something here real quick. I want to see how do I add. That's to add a guest. Is that how you do it? Okay. That's the Talk Studio link. If anyone wants to join and chat for a little bit, that'd be cool. I'm only going to be on for maybe another half hour at the most, and then I'm out of here. I got to have dinner, and then I've also got to take a nice extended nap before I go into work tonight.
You're just looking at the word slave and saying, aha, gotcha. So
No, that's not what we're doing. That's not even remotely what we're doing, JiL. And you're looking at the word slave. You're looking at it and going, well, I'm not seeing kidnapping and someone being forced to work, so there's no slavery here. When there's nothing about, there's even in the 1926 Slavery Convention that you presented does not say that kidnapping has to take place. in order for a person to be a slave.
Most of it was just voluntary work, and much of it was debt work. A lot of it was prisoners who were paying restitution. So you had an entire system of work. So it becomes very difficult for the atheist, to find slavery in the Bible because of that fact.
No, it's not difficult to find slavery. 2 Kings 4, Exodus 21, Deuteronomy 15, Leviticus 25, Jeremiah 34. There's one in Numbers. I mean, I can't remember the one in Numbers, but that specific one. But yeah, it's not difficult to find them. It's you that are blind to this, JiL. You've locked yourself in on the apologetic. You can't accept the Christian. You can't accept this because it conflicts with your religious beliefs. So you're invested.
They can find it, but they just misconstrue it so beyond reason that it becomes ridiculous. That's why I don't show up too much to any. Well, plus I'm banned from a lot of these channels anyway. Oh no, but you know, it hurts me so bad. But yeah, no, some of these people are just silly.
Hey,
what are you watching, by the way?
Oh, this is B.S. Lewis and Big Bad Mama talking with another atheist about slavery. No Christians in the room. No one here that can help.
No, you don't need it. In fact, that's a mistake to even have
them read the Bible. No one here that can help them with the history and the language and all the.
You don't have to do a historical. You don't have to do a historical thing in order to read the narrative. JiL, that's a fucking mistake. You fucking idiot.
Those things.
I don't want the help.
Just atheists in an echo chamber. This is how they love to conduct their discussions. And speaking of atheists, welcome.
You say it 3 times loud enough, they show up.
Hey,
I had
this
to
is
yes.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any comments or concerns?
I just came across. I just come up. I ain't watched it yet, so just keep on trucking.
Okay.
JiL
owns the atheists on the slavery debate. That's for sure. What do you think about that? Think that's true or false?
Yeah. Whatever you say. That's. I just come in here to see what are we covering anyway? Is this like from last week on?
This is just this is BS. I just found this stream and I was just listening and I commented on Section 8 when they started talking about the Bible and slavery. So
to be honest, JiL, I think if you just let the atheists talk, they'll just end up owning themselves eventually. It's just like it comes around full circle and just bonks them right on the head. But they don't see it. I don't know. Maybe they get concussed and forgot it even happened, and then they go at it again.
The dopamine levels are low. That's the problem.
This wolf guy needs to go plan traffic.
Well,
how are your dopamine levels, Robin?
No, dopamine levels are just fine. Look, we got Wesley.
Sure?
Wesley's here too. Wesley.
Hey, Wesley.
Well, I'll do 5 minutes of torture with you if you want to play a little bit of video. Let's play a little game of how long can I last before I'm like have to laugh myself away.
Before Wesley comes in and tells us about the dream.
The frogs and the dreams and the pizzas.
The ashes you all now see is the desolation.
God bless you, Wesley. God bless you. That's all I have to say.
The omni barcodes is the abomination.
Man, don't fuck with Wesley, man. He's like bicycle without a seat. He'll get up that ass.
The omni Wesley sounds like one of those guys back in the 90s and the 2000s when remember those videos, those movies used to come out about the market of bees and the end times.
I think he might have been MK Ultra. He may have been MK Ultra.
And
I'm not even playing.
I'm gonna skip.
What was the name of those movies that he played in? The Left Behind series. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
You
set up a V. That's right. Remember?
I got my VR headset right. I'm going into the void.
We're not going to be allowed to purchase.
He sounds like Big Bad Mama. I've been fooled. For Wesley,
And BS's birthday. Is this BS?
No, I said. Well, I don't know who's viewing. I don't know how many people's viewing, but no, I don't know.
Oh, I thought like that. Remember that guy? That, like he didn't even know you, but like I don't know. He was like
Yeah, he's just he's anti-Christian. That's probably his problem.
like he gave me a headache actually.
Yeah, he's just anti-Christian. So we get a lot of the atheist apologetics here.
No, you don't.
It's not really. You're not really trying to read the Bible to.
No, you don't. You don't get a lot of people, period, dude. We get a lot of atheist apologetics. No, you don't. No, you don't.
Understand it. It's sort of like talking to them. That's what
the magic word.
People were being purchased 50 years ago in the antebellum South, not because they were slaves, but because they were migrant workers.
You go to Africa and purchase a couple.
They were slaves. People were being purchased 50 years ago. Sing, oh, now.
The magic word.
Purchasing. Oh, look, people are being purchased.
Mhm.
People were being purchased 50 years ago in the antebellum South, not because they were slaves, but because they were migrant workers.
And so if a person, if you got, this is interesting, Jill. So if a ship came in and they took a bunch of black people that were in chains off the ship, and then a person was like, hey, what's the point of all these black men and women that you've pulled off this boat that are in chains? And this guy goes, oh, well, we're going to be selling them to you. Really? So I can purchase one of them, or I can purchase some of them? Yes, you can. Is that what he's referring to? I'm just, holy shit.
You can go to Africa and purchase a couple people right now.
I can go to Home Depot and purchase a couple of people. But
you're not oh my God, you're not purchasing them. If you were to purchase them, then you would have rights of ownership. There'd be some kind of ownership. This, oh my God, the fact that they still do this, it's like it renders the term purchase almost completely fucking inane or useless. If I purchase something, then I own it. I have rights of ownership, right? If someone takes something that they purchased from me, then I can seek damages. I can seek restitution for that which I've purchased. I don't purchase a person. If I go down to my Home Depot, which there's a lot of fucking people that are migrant workers that hang out down at the Home Depot, I can go down there. I hire them. I ask them, hey, I see that you offer fencing, or you put up fencing, or you haul garbage, or you do lawn work, or something like that. And they go, yeah. And I say, okay, how much do you charge? And they go, well, this much an hour. Then I go, okay, cool. When can you come by? And they go, we can come by. We'll set up a time. We'll be by at this time. And yep, all good. They come by, they do the work. I pay them for their work. I pay them for how many hours? If they said $20 an hour, $15 an hour, 30, whatever, they work for 3 hours, I pay them that much. Simple math. They do my yard work, I give them the money. Maybe I give them a little extra for being thorough, or maybe because they finished, faster than they said they would. Give them a little tip, whatever, and on their way. I don't purchase them. I swear, it's the R word needs to be brought back just for some people like Jill. My wife's laughing. She's napping next to me in her chair.
Well, I have my theory on why you defend biblical slavery. So
what's that?
We won't
Because it's not illegal today. Here's why. You can have a theory, but here's why. Because what they were doing would not be illegal today in our country. Prove me wrong.
What?
Okay.
Wait, what?
Our country. Prove because what they it's not illegal today. Here's why. What's that?
We won't
because it's Home Depot and purchase a couple of people. But
I have my theory on why you defend biblical slavery. So
what's that?
We won't.
Because
Know.
it's not,
because it is what it is.
illegal today. Here's why. You can have a theory, but here's why. Because what they were doing would not be illegal today in our country. Prove me.
Really? So if really, so if I owe debt, if a woman owes, I won't use myself. If a man has outstanding debt, let's say credit card debt, whatever, right? And he dies, then it's okay. And I'm married and I have children. I die, the debt stays with my wife. My wife is now responsible for paying off my debt. And then the creditors that I owe that debt to, they can come and take our children as slaves against my wife's will. That wouldn't be, that's not illegal today, Jill? Or how about this one? I owe some guy some money and I've got a 16-year-old daughter. And I go, look, I don't have enough money to pay you back. I don't think I'll ever have the money to pay you back. But I've got my 16-year-old daughter here. And the guy goes, okay. So I give him my 16-year-old daughter. Is that legal today, Jill?
Be wrong.
Okay. Whatever you say, Jill.
Play a little bit.
I can prove you wrong right now. Slavery Convention 1926. So according to, actually we need the other one. Where's the 1956 one? What are you watching, hon? Better turn that off. I don't want to get struck. Okay, and we're going to go here. All right. So Article 1. So Leviticus 25:39 deals with debt bondage, right? An Israelite is so indentured that he sells himself to another Israelite, right? That is to say, the status or condition arising from a pledge by a debtor of his personal services or of those of a person under his control as a security for debt. If the value of those services is reasonably assessed, is not applied towards the liquidation of the debt or the length of nature, and the service is not respectively limited and defined, right? Now, in this particular case, in this one, the case is I kind of okay. I guess because you have that, oh, they can just serve till the year of Jubilee. So maybe it's fine. But that's sketchy, right? That kind of indentured servitude is sketchy. Any institution or practice whereby a woman without the right to refuse is promised or given in marriage. Does Genesis or does Exodus 21:7-11 say that the daughter has any right to refuse? Remember, she's being sold as an Eved. She does not get to go out. And that's more akin, most scholars agree that that's more akin to sex slave. Right? And then 2 Kings 4, again, any institution or practice whereby a child or a young person under the age of 18 years is delivered by either or both of his natural parents or by his guardian or to another person, whether for reward or not, with a view to the exploitation of the child or young person or of his labor. So yeah, it's plenty illegal. Even Leviticus 25:39, that might be seen as slavery even today. Because the only way that the person gets out, the only way that the person can get out of the debt is to either, in Leviticus 25:39 for a fellow Israelite, is to either serve to the year of Jubilee, which is the 50th year, or, and that runs, or to be restored by a family, it seems, family member, or even just a fellow Israelite if they want to free them. So, yeah, most of what is going on in the Bible would be illegal by today's standards. If you don't get paid, can't give 2 weeks notice and leave, then it's slavery. I am here for the torturing. Yes. There was something on here. Oh yeah. Nicholas said, playing in traffic could damage valuable inanimate objects. He should play on top of hydro dams or do his best impression of Kurt Cobain. Get killed by his wife. uh,
A little bit more of the video.
Fight with you. You know I don't like fighting with you. I don't fight with you much at all.
Okay.
I'll fight with you,
answer
Jill.
it.
you can prove most of it. 2 Kings 4 is illegal. The 21 Exodus 21 7 through 11 is illegal. Someone selling themselves to another person as an indentured servant for 6 years, probably not the best by today's standards. Well, because according to the supplement, which again was written in 1956, this part reads debt bondage, that is to say, the status or condition arising from a pledge by a debtor of his personal service or of those of a person under his control as security for a debt. If the value of those services as reasonably assessed is not applied towards the liquidation of the debt or the length and the nature of those services are not respectively limited and defined. Right? But in this particular case, in Leviticus 25, the person who is impoverished, it's interesting because it doesn't say Leviticus 20. Let me go back to Leviticus 25 real quick. That doesn't necessarily say that they're impoverished, which is weird. I wonder if that might be another sticking point for one of those kind of like, oh, well, how does this work as far as does impoverished normally mean to be in debt up to your ass, or can you just be actually so poor that you're not actually in debt? You're just destitute, but maybe you paid off all your money and paid off everybody, but you don't have anything left, so you're destitute. Because that's the problem with this particular language here. In Leviticus 25, NRSVUE, Because see, it goes into this. It starts off with with redeeming some people who are having problems. Like, if any one of your kin falls into difficulty and sells a piece of property, then the next of kin shall come and redeem what the relative has sold. If the person has no one to redeem it, but then prospers and finds sufficient means to do so, the years since its sale shall be computed and the difference refunded to the person of whom it was sold, and the property shall be returned. But if there are no sufficient means to recover it, what was sold shall remain with the purchaser until the year of Jubilee. In the Jubilee, it shall be released and the property shall all be returned. But here it is. If any of your kin fall into difficulty and become dependent on you, you shall support them. They shall live with you as though resident aliens. Do not take interest in advance or otherwise make profit from them. But fear your God, let them live with you. You shall not lend them your money at interest. Take in advance, provide, blah, blah, blah. If the dependent becomes so impoverished that they sell themselves to you, you shall not make them serve as slaves. They shall serve with you until the year of the Jubilee. Then they and their children that go out from your authority. They shall go back to their own family and return to their ancestral property. For they are my servants whom I brought out of the land of Egypt. Yeah. So now here's the interesting thing about Leviticus 35 or 39. It says that they've become so impoverished. It doesn't say that they've become necessarily so indebted. This isn't saying that they're in debt up to their ass. This is just saying that they're impoverished. And then they sell themselves to a fellow Israelite, right? And then they remain with them as a hired or bond laborer. They shall serve with it until the year of Jubilee. This doesn't say that they go out. In that scenario, it doesn't say that they're going to be compensated. So yeah. But then it says here, if a resident alien amongst you prosper and any of your kin fall into difficulty with one of them, and sells, so basically becomes indebted to them. I think that's what that's kind of what that meaning there, into difficulty with one of them, and sells themselves to the alien or to a branch of the alien's family. Even after they had sold themselves, they shall have the right of redemption. One of their brothers may redeem them, or their uncle's son may redeem them, or any one of their family who is of their own flesh may redeem them. Or if they prosper, they may redeem themselves. So if they have some kind of windfall, they shall compute with the purchaser the total from the year when they sold themselves to the alien until the Jubilee year. The price of the sale shall be applied to the number of years. The time they were with the owner shall be rated as the time of a hired laborer. In many years, if many years remain, they shall pay for their redemption in proportion to the purchase price. And if few years remain until the Jubilee year, they shall compute thus according to the years involved. They shall make payment for their redemption. So in that one, it's more of indentured servitude in ways of paying off a debt. But in Leviticus 39, it's just an impoverished person. This isn't necessarily an indentured person who owes debt. This is an impoverished Israelite who sells himself to another Israelite, basically to get by. So that's an important distinction there as well. 39 is not saying that they're in debt.
You cannot prove me wrong.
Just that one night on tacos, I had to come in there just because everybody was bored.
Okay,
Much.
just because you see the word purchase or buying or selling does not mean you have demonstrated anyone is being forced into that lifestyle, if you
Nobody has to be forced to be a slave.
will, or that system. The Hebrews, just like many of the other ancient groups, their monetary system was work. So work equals currency. If you owed someone money, you worked for them. You became their aved. You became their slave. If you fought and you broke their tooth, you had to work to pay restitution, to pay back the tooth. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, or we're taking your tooth. If you owed money or if you were committed a crime,
whoa.
again, work
hold the phone.
is the way or institution to their slave. If you became their aved, you became their monetary system was work. So work equals currency.
No.
If you owed someone money, you worked for them. You became their aved.
Hold on a second. I want to make sure I'm actually off. Yep.
You became their slave.
No. If you owed someone money, you didn't. Wait, what are you doing, Joe? What are you doing? How did you do this?
Hebrews, just like many of the other ancient groups, their monetary system was work. So work equals currency.
I would like to citation source, please, or quote anything.
If you owed someone money, you worked for them. You became their aved.
No, there's nothing saying that at all. In this particular case, the wife didn't go and work for the credit. In 2 Kings 4, it wasn't the case. Obviously, the husband is dead in that narrative. The wife didn't automatically, because now the debt falls upon the wife. She doesn't become the Eved. They take her sons as slaves. And she didn't have to work it off, and they didn't have to work it off. Elisha found a way for them through a miracle for them to use a small bottle of olive oil, and then they borrowed a bunch of oil of jars from their neighbors, and then this one flask of oil filled all of those jars up. They sold that oil for a profit, and then used what the profits that they gained off of the oil, selling the oil, to pay off the debt, and the rest they could live on. No work happened. They did not go and work for the creditor in that narrative, Joe. Second Kings 4 completely refutes this bullshit that you're trying to sell to Robin right now. The children are not willingly going to work for the creditor. They're going to be, according to the narrative, they're going to be taken against their mother's will to be slaves. The mother does not want them to be taken. That's why she's pleading with Elisha. She does not go and work to pay off the husband's debt. She gets the benefit of a miracle where she gets to use a small thing of oil to fill up a bunch of other empty jars full of oil and sell them, and use the proceeds, the monies that she got for selling that oil, to pay off the creditors and to use the rest of it to live on. No work, Joe. Who's biblically illiterate now?
You became their slave.
No. The only way the person was going to become a slave in that scenario in 2 Kings 4 was when the creditors were going to come and take her kids as slaves. They were going to be taken as commodity or as collateral on a debt that her dead husband owed. There's nothing in there that says they were only going to work for that guy for a certain amount of time. They were only going to work for this creditor for a certain amount of time. There's nothing about that in the narrative. Now, it could be the case that since it seems to be an Israelite, right? This is an Israelite woman, that these children are Israelites. Maybe they would only serve 6 years and go out on the 7th. I don't know. Either way, She did not want them getting taken. That's why she's pleading with Elisha. And so yeah, that's bad,
If
Joe.
you fought and you broke their tooth, you had to work to pay restitution.
No, you did not. What are you talking about, Jill? You did not. Nobody. If I broke a worker's tooth, the worker got to go away, got to stop working for me. What kind of narrative? What kind of bullshit are you trying to sell, Robin?
To pay back the tooth. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
No, Lex Talionis does not apply in this scenario, Jill. Nobody is paying back the tooth. Where did you get this from? Let me go back
and you broke their tooth. You had to work to pay restitution.
No.
To pay back the tooth. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Or we're taking your tooth. If you owed money or if you committed a crime, again, work is the way.
Not necessarily. I don't know of any law. I don't know of the laws where you had to just work to make restitution. There's nothing laid out in the 613 laws about that. He's going to have to show that one. But in the Exodus 21, yes. Yes. So right here, and this goes along with that. When people are fighting and injure a pregnant woman so that there is a miscarriage and yet no further harm follows, the one responsible shall be fined what the woman's husband demands, paying as much as the judge determines. If any harm follows, then you shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. That's lex talionis. When a slave owner strikes the eye of a male or female slave, destroying it, the owner shall let the slave go. They shall let the slave go, a free person, to compensate for the eye. If the owner knocks out a tooth of a male or female slave, the slave shall be let go, a free person, to compensate for the tooth. It says nothing about anyone working for the person that they destroyed. It's saying here that the slave goes out free as compensation for the eye. They're being manumitted. That's manumission from slavery.
Of currency. So you had to work in order to pay back or to pay restitution. In that case, you might have been forced because you're a criminal and you have no rights until you pay back what you.
All right. I really don't know where he's getting this from. He's not, and I don't know if anyone else has noticed of my limited audience here, but has anyone noticed that he hasn't pulled up any Bible verses?
Oh, okay. So when we read the biblical text and we see the word slave and we see the word purchase, we need not jump to conclusions that this is referring to Toby and the movie Roots.
No, it's not referring to Toby in the movie Roots. It is referring to a person who is owned as property, though, Jill. It's a person who is owned as property. They are owned. They are another person's property. If they're walking along doing something and an ox gores them to death, the owner of the ox pays the owner of that person of that slave 30 shekels, 30 pieces of silver, 30 pieces as restitution for the loss of the slave. They don't work. They don't work for this. They don't work. They don't go and work for the owner of the ox. The owner of the ox doesn't go and work for the guy. for the slave owner. He just pays the slave owner money for the loss of the slave.
But that's about it.
Yeah,
And I haven't been on Twitter in at least a year, maybe.
No, that's good.
Year and a
Good for
half.
you.
Big
It's
bad
fucking
mama
awesome.
llama.
It's only maggots and it's only Nazis now. So don't even.
It's only maggots, and it's only Nazis now.
When was the last time you seen a Nazi, Jill?
Obama?
He was more like a mullah.
No, he's a Marxist. He's more than like a Marxist.
Oh, you're being silly.
He's more like a Marxist. But yeah, I think Marxism is probably what we see, what we're seeing out in the open now. They're not even hiding the fact that they're Marxists.
All right, that's enough stupid. I'll be done. I'm done. It's 2:30. Calling it quits. That's enough stupid. So yeah, I hope some people got benefit of that. I hope they some people got a benefit of that. Sorry, sitting here looking around at this new interface. That's the end of the stream. I don't think I'm going to go back to it, and I might scroll through it a little bit later, see if I can find anything else that's just absolutely asinine, which probably a guarantee. You know, if you look for the stupid here, you're guaranteed to find it on the JiL channel. So thanks all for participating, and have a good night.